the only reason you can react to someone else's weather is if you think that it has got something to do with you. You're creating the experience of that person, and as soon as you change, they will change.
What's on offer from that place? Would more people feel heard? Would more storm systems be quelled?
And the answer is yes.
Every day when we wake up, we know that we're going to be dealing with people who will be in different states of weather systems, internal climates, and some folks will be experiencing a very sunny, joyful kind of day, and everything's right with the world. And then there are other people who we will encounter who will be living through a bit of a storm, and indeed, we may be going through a bit of a storm, and so there may even be a compounding effect when two kind of storm systems meet. And so I just wanted to explore this idea of what would it mean, what would it look like if we were more uh, in tune with detecting what the weather system was in others, and then being more empathetic to that in terms of the choices we made between stimulus and response.
Well, even if you just think about, like, if you ever watch the weather forecast and like how superstorms get formed and all of these things, it is when different weather fronts collide into each other and like combine to form something that's even more potentially destructive than what was there beforehand. And like, there's one thing that just appears universal to me, is that we all have weather. Everyone has weather. Like, you can't go through life without experiencing stormy weather within yourself. And for those listening the first time, like the stormy weather, which I'm sure you get, but it's your moods, like your state of mind, the turbulence that sometimes just shows up in that, and sometimes you can't even explain it. You just you're off, and and that seems to be just a fact of life. It's part of our experience, and it's up for grabs how seriously we take our weather. And it also seems universally true to me that everybody else also has weather. Um, and it's exactly like our own weather, except it's theirs. But what also seems true to me is you have a choice as to, and that's just a fact. That's just what is. And what seems up for grabs there as well is the choice of how we react to someone else's weather and the stories that we make up about it. Um, but it is good to know that everyone has weather. Everyone has weather, and I guess as I think about it, it seems entirely unpredictable to me. So where it gets interesting is like when you said there, what if you could approach it with more empathy? And I wonder if the first thing, in order to be able to do that, you have to you have to look within first, because to have empathy for another person, first of all, means recognizing it within yourself, I think, at least anyway, and understanding that your weather never comes from another person. You know, it's not created outside of you. It's an internal phenomenon. And I think we are very used to, though, not understanding that that's true. So we often believe that our weather is caused by something outside of ourselves.
Say more on that.
Well, because none of us particularly enjoy, or sometimes we don't accept the fact that we're angry or sad or pissed off or anxious or stressed, and I'm going for all the labels of the things that people would call uncomfortable feelings, perhaps. And the first thing we try and do is explain that away, often by looking at things outside of ourselves. I'm stressed because of a person, a thing, a job, a bank balance. And it's like that's seems totally reasonable to think that that might be true, but it's actually not. And I suppose I'm coming back to first principles of can we are we willing to accept that our feeling system is a reflection of the thinking that's going on in our awareness in that moment. And that, like all weather, it will pass. If you sit quietly and observe it, it will pass at some stage, and then you'll come back to your senses. The clouds will part, the sun will shine again, and you'll wonder, geez, that was mad. Like I was very caught up in my stormy thinking, but now it no longer looks that way. And the reason why I pointed that is because the only reason you can react to someone else's weather is if you think that it has got something to do with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reason that often we think it's got something to do with us is because we're in the habit of also blaming our weather on other people. So we get up into this battle. You
Mm.
know, we personalize their mood onto ourselves, and we think it's got something to do with us, and we get defensive rather than empathetic. So I come back to as a starting point, huh, gosh, like to be empathetic is to really notice and to be able to recognize that feeling in someone else that's also true for you, and be able to like, oh yeah, I know what that is like. And I know it's got nothing to do with me because my weather's got nothing to do with them. And so I can
Mm.
come back to this place. And the reason why I smiled when you said it to me before is because I had a long conversation with someone about this today. About
Oh,
like
yeah.
they were like, I need this person. I need someone to stop doing all of these things because it's causing me this. And in the end, our whole conversation centered around, no, you are causing all of this. You are the source of all of this. And but it's really alluring, the idea that it's them, because then it looks like your job is to get them to change, and if they change then you'll be different. But actually, if you change, you'll be different, and then they'll be different. They can't be the same because you're creating them. You're creating the experience of that person, and as soon as you change, they will change. It's science. It's how it works. Like you cannot the universe cannot remain the same, in as you change, everything changes around you. So that
Yeah.
was so I'm going to stop there, but that's why it made me smile, because you know this person, we had a great conversation. Is like, yeah, but what if they don't immediately, you know, what if they don't immediately change? And I was like, oh well, that's okay. You know, it'd be interesting to see what will happen.
It just makes me think, I haven't thought about this for a while, but when we had Amy Jen Sue on, probably over a year ago now, I remember this concept in her book was this concept, it was a Taoist concept of effortless action, Wu Wei, I think it was called. And it's like, in the same way, and it's often cited like, oh, water doesn't try and smash through the rocks. Water just effortlessly meanders between the rocks and makes its way. And you're like, okay, how do you adopt that sort of Wu Wei effortless um, approach to people when you see the storm cloud? Like, let's take children. Children are a great example. As parents, or his aunts or uncles or teachers or anybody who engages with children, um, we they if you're not awake to the this idea that there's this internal climate system happening in this kid, and they kick off, you know, there's often this, to your point, this reaction about, well, what does their behavior, how is their behavior affecting me, and what does it say about me? What am I so attached to that I feel I have to berate or engage with this child in a certain way in order to restore the calm and the the peace the way that I want to construct it for myself and for how I think things should be, versus going, geez, man, I wonder what's going on with this kid. And I don't have to be a lightning rod for their electric storm. I can just effortlessly engage or let them pass or observe or show deep empathy because they really they've really got something going on, but it's got nothing to do with me. And their weather can't affect me, and my weather can't affect them unless I allow it to. And so, how do you even begin to cultivate that level of seamless pass through?
Well, I'll tell you a story from last night, actually, because it relates to Dylan. And the word effortless, by the way, I wouldn't say it triggered me, but it catches me because I sometimes I don't think it's effortless. I think actually it might take a little bit of effort at first to not react, to kind of just say, okay, I'm slowing down. Dylan is in the middle of his Dylan started his GCSEs today, and Dylan's not a lover of school, so like his brother, like school kind of came naturally to him, and Dylan finds it trickier and just not, it just doesn't enjoy it as much. So, but to be fair, he's been putting a shift in, and we got him an English tutor because he wants to do. It's one of the subjects he needs to do well at. So we just recently got him a tutor, and then he came downstairs yesterday evening, and just before he's gone to bed, and he said, I'm not going to the English tutor on Tuesday." And I was like, "Oh no, mate, you are going to the English tutor on Tuesday." I was like, "What? Why are you not going?" And he's like, "Because I want to go and I want to study with Robin, who's his girlfriend, in Starbucks, and I don't have English on Wednesday, and I've got history, and I've got biology, and I really want to study that." And I was like, "Well, your tutor's only an hour, and you can still do history." And Dylan, like he blew his top, like just lost his cool and was like, "You can't make me go to the tutor. It's like it's my life, it's my choice. I don't want to go to the tutor." And I was like, "You're going to your tutor." So I didn't lose my rag with him, um, but I wasn't. But equally, I was being pretty firm. Like, you're going to the tutor, and he just lost. Like, he just was so angry, um, and he stormed out of the room. He stormed out of the room upstairs. Now I'm going to take a pause there because I had a realization that sometimes the reason why we react to each other is because we have opinions about the context that we're both in at any given time. And so there was a context there, which was this tutor piece. And I think I did realize this last night, but At first, I didn't, because I just went straight in on the context as well, which was, no, like, you are doing this. And even though I could see his weather, I was not being empathetic. I wasn't aware enough of his weather, and didn't catch myself early enough to be able to go, like, there's nothing he's going to be able to hear from me now anyway, because he's clearly got, there's a storm brewing behind this. But I had an attachment, and interesting to your word, I had an attachment to the idea of what needed to happen on the Tuesday. So, so he stormed off, and I sat there with Sean, and I was like, oh, bloody hell, like, don't like it when he's like that. And Sean was like, I don't like it when he's like that either. And it's unusual for him because Dylan doesn't lose his temper very often. And anyway, a couple of minutes passed, and then I thought, okay, I'm going to go up and have a chat with him. Sean's like, do you want me to come? I was like, no, I'll go up. So I just sat down beside him, and I was like, hey, what's going on? He's like, you cannot make me go to the tutor. And I was like, well, let's put that to one side for a second. Like, and we ended up having this conversation. I was like, let's just put that to one side for a second. I said, like, I just want to understand what's going on. I've told you what's going on. I was like, okay. Well, I said, let's just say that, I'll talk to the tutor tomorrow and I'll see what she says. And I said, like, maybe there's something that can be done. But but I said to him, but I'm really interested. I said, because you're not normally like this. So you're not normally like this. So I'm just curious. Like, what's driving the anger? And then a couple of minutes later, he did get quiet, and he went, well, he said, because when I study with Robin, I do better in my exams. He's like, and he said, I want to do well in this exam, and like, I can study with Robin and I'll do better in my exam. And he said, and history is what I want to do in my GCSEs. And I was like, so it is because you want to study with Robin, not because you, the timing's out and everything else. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, what stopped you just telling us that from the beginning? Because that's not what he led with. And that's where you could start to see, like, his stormy thinking was, well, he got into his head that he couldn't say that to us because that's not an acceptable reason to say he's not going to the English tutor. And so he got himself worked up before he came down. And then I met his worked upness with just a bang, no, rather than seeing the weather. But maybe to your point, like, once putting aside my attachment to the idea that he was going to the tutor, putting aside my attachment to the idea that I was right and he was wrong, was the gateway for me to be actually able to have a conversation with him about what's really going on here for you, because this doesn't make sense to me. And then he was able to open up. And so it's interesting what you say about, like, what happens there. And I think it is because often there's a context and we do have an attachment, sometimes without realizing it. We have an attachment to the context, or we have an attachment to the way that we think people should be. And that attachment stops us being curious about the experience of the other person because we're caught up in holding on to the thing that we believe to be right or necessary in that moment. And we're actually fighting for that rather than being able to go, oh, wow, like, there's nothing to fight for here because even if there is something to talk about here, like, there's no value in talking about it because I'm not going to be able to. There's not going to. I'm not going to. I'm not even talking to my son really. I'm talking to a stormy, thought created, ego driven, whatever you call it. So I don't know if that story lands, but that's just feels very real in terms of what you said around what stops us. And I think it is our attachment to the idea that something needs to be different. And therefore, we're so focused on that that we're seeing it as a battle of wills, or an us versus them, versus being empathetic about what's going on for them.
I mean, we talk about weather, but it's, whether it's two storm clouds clashing into each other or just two egos. And what I heard in that is you've got one noisy ego clashing with another noisy ego. And I guess this goes back to the question, like, how do we do it? What's the practice? And the subtext for me of what you said is, the moment you realize it's not about you, the is the moment you can be aware of the weather in other people. And so, and that's hard to do. Like, I mean, we've all experienced moments, family life, professional life, interacting with other members of the public, whether it's going into a shop or a restaurant, where there's something going on and we take it so personally that we meet the storm head on. And the consequences of doing that are, it's messy. Like roofs get ripped off, it instead of having the deep compassion. And it's not that you have to engage with it. Like, this is what I'm seeing, like, Vanny will often say to me, like, if one of the girls is in a foul mood for whatever reason, she's like, yeah, I don't have your detachment. And it's not that I'm detached. It's like, I don't not love Gracie or Mads less because they're in a foul mood. Like, I love them as much as I've always loved them. I just don't want to engage with that. I don't want to be a lightning rod for it. And now the learning for me is, rather than sort of kind of almost doing a bit of an ostrich and sticking my head in the sand a bit, waiting for the storm to pass, the learning for me is to go, oh, okay, they're experiencing some heavy weather. To your point, if you're comfortable with the fact that it's not about you, then are you comfortable with the next step, which is about being curious from that place of love and going, hey, Maddles, or hey, Gracie, what's going on? Everything okay? Because I know you're not pissed off at me, because I can't think of anything that I've done. And maybe I have done something and I didn't realize it, but that's okay. Like, tell me what it is. But more often than not, it's a case of like, well, tell me what's going on. Like, what is the internal weather? And it takes me back to that conversation we had with Jen, and the story of her son Kai, Jen Rowe. Like, if we stopped believing it was all about us and we became more curious about other people, without becoming a lightning rod for their bad weather system, but just out of a place of deep, curious, empathetic loveliness, like, what's on offer from that place? Like, would more people feel heard Would more storm systems be quelled? Would would more sunshine flood in? I don't know.
Well, look, I think we do know. I think the answer is yes. I think actually the answer to that is yes, because I think we see it time and time again. Like when people are not attached to the idea it's about themselves and they get curious about another person from a place of love, more sunshine comes in. It's just, it's like ask someone to stay angry in the face of love, and it's very hard. It's just really hard. And actually, you see that the most with your kids, I think, as you grow up. Like you meet fire with fire, and I tell you what, like in many ways, they can burn brighter than we can, and you're like Jesus. But when they're on fire and you show up with love, like the fire goes out faster than anything else. So I actually think we do know. I think we do know that that's true, and I think it's what makes the practice almost so like confusing. It's like we know that to be true, and yet it it can be quite hard. It can be
Mm,
really challenging to be empathetic, and I think it's because you have to be willing to let go of so much of your potential conditioning, like, uh, and the psychology that you've built up over the course of time, or that you've been indoctrinated with, because on the face of it, often, like when we've got weather or someone else's weather, we do or say things that are not generally seen as socially acceptable, and so we have our rules about the way people should behave, and what's appropriate in what situations, um, and all of these things, school tutors, all of the noise in our heads from like what we've been conditioned over years and years, that is our belief system. And then often someone's weather shows up and it challenges your belief system, and that's where you've got to like let go of the fact of like, no, whatever you are thinking about the idea that this person is somehow like, you know wrong, the only reason is that you can think that is because there's something there that's bouncing up against a piece of wiring in you. Like if you think about your kids, when actually, because Vanny's right, I think, when she says, "Well, you're more detached." I'm like, yeah, she's exactly right. You're not more detached from your kids. You're just detached from the idea that they should be anything other than the way they are.
mm,
That's what you've got detachment from. Like you're not attached to the idea that your kids should always be in a good mood, or that they need to be in a good mood for you. You're just detached from the idea that they're anything other than perfect. So therefore you're like, oh, and I know that you're not saying you're perfect, and I know that you like there'll be times that your girls go under your skin because you're a human being, but I do think what you're saying there is like, largely it's just, oh, this is interesting. Mads has got some shit going on. Like, what is it? What's going on, baby? Talk to me. But it might be different when it's a work colleague. Might be not for you, but I think often, well, for some people, it's harder to with when it's those that are closest to them, and for other people, it's harder when it's those that are like some relationships are harder than others. Whether it's a peer at work, or your loved one, because you're attached to the idea that they should be a certain way because you have these rules. And so the practice, if there is a practice as well, or like where's the source of the practice, is to notice like, whew, I'm having some stormy weather about another person. Like, what is going on here? Like, this is about me now. it's a willingness to actually go within and go, fuck, what is it that I'm like not prepared to be with? Like, what is it triggering for me? Because that's actually doing the self work. Because you cannot, when people talk about being triggered, they think it's the person that's triggering them. And I think weather on weather is what people talk about being triggered. It's like someone's showing up with weather, and then they're like, they've triggered me, and that's why I'm this way, and blah blah blah. And it's like they've not triggered you; they've just shown up and whatever. But you have something inside of you that you haven't resolved, and that's just gone off. And the only way that you can resolve that is by going internally and like finding that wire and taking a good look at it and asking yourself, am I willing to still let this run the show?
Mhm. You know what I did the other night? It was funny. Do you know the show Survivor?
Mm. Yeah.
It's one of my favorite shows. Like Vanny and I love watching Survivor, and actually the girls love it as well. But they go off to this amazing island sort of paradise, but they exist under very harsh conditions. Like these people don't eat, and I think they like the most recent season they had to kill a chicken, and anyway, but they're competing, and then obviously some of the rewards is going to the sanctuary and having a decent meal, and but often, and I've said this to Vanny quite often, like I think they sometimes select these people to be triggering, like in different elements of the audience, and so you have this real mixed bag of contestants, and then inevitably you have your favorites, and it's very human. But what I started recently doing is and there was this one contestant, I won't name her, but she like was very triggering for me. Like I just wanted her to get voted off. And but then I was like, oh, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Like what in this person and the way that they come across, and I'm sure the way the editors have stitched it together, there's an element of gamesmanship there as well. But I was like, what is it about this person? And then the the interesting thing, to your point, is when you become curious about people, and you sort of peer in, and you go like, what, I wonder what is going on there. You, even their eye movements and the words that they use and their gestures and their action, you see that coming from a different place, and you see the the what you projected falls away, and what is probably emerges, and you develop a very different perspective, and you actually develop great empathy for all of the contestants equally. And you may still have your favorites because they make you laugh, or you think they're highly strategic, or what have you, but you develop a far softer view of the world, not as judgy, and you develop a really interesting, like the show takes on a whole different tint, because you're like, oh, maybe she is super anxious, or maybe he is super insecure, or maybe he comes from, he told that story, and that must have been really tough, or she's experienced this at her work, and so you can understand what's going on inside her, and like it's really interesting. And if you can do that for a TV show where you're completely distanced from these people, I mean, there's the the luxury of the third wall. But if you could apply that in real life, in the real life movie unfolding in front of you, like that becomes really interesting. And so my experiment for the next couple of weeks is to go and do exactly that and see what comes out of it. And I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be interesting.
So, what do you think your judgment of her was? Like, what was the thing that you were holding to be true inside of you that was um, the source?
My judgment of her was that she thought she was smarter than the other contestants, and she was a little arrogant, and she thought she could manipulate people uh, quite easily. So she sort of looked down her nose a bit at some of the contestants. And as you know, I really struggle with people who think that they are better than others. And so I was like, oh, that she's not a nice human being. She's got to go. Whereas actually, the more I sort of looked at it, she's actually had a really tough time. And she may have had a tough time at work in particular. This is what she referenced, because she believed that, she was often left out of things or what have you. And maybe it's because people had the same reaction I did. I don't know. But you could see how um you could see how she was behaving the way she was because of the weather inside her.
And we're all behaving the way we are because of our weather, like even our good weather. you know, like we talk about weather as though it's always bad weather, but like I'm sure there's someone who would see an entirely different side of that person. But it makes there's two things in that, and thank you for sharing, because the only way you can get curious about someone is to be willing to go beyond your initial judgment. Like that is the practice. Like you had to notice the fact that you were judging that person without, I don't think there's a better word, like, because that's what we all do. Like human beings are judgment machines. So we just judge people, but just based on made up stuff in our heads. Like, oh, she's manipulating people and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, that's what happens. For you and fair play, you had to first of all notice it, and then you had to be willing to go beyond it and be like, what's going on here? What else could equally be as true for this person? And even if she was manipulating someone, then you started to get curious about, geez, like what might be driving that? And then you heard new things, and it brings me back. It makes me read. I think I think it might be Sydney Banks who says, um, everyone is always doing their very best based on what they see to be true in that moment. Always doing their best. And if, let's say, this woman, I'm just taking her as an example, if we never know the range of experiences that have created in someone a perspective, which means that that is what they believe is the best thing to do in that moment, even if it makes no sense to us. And that's the place to get curious from. It's like, oh, what could be going on there? Because they're doing
Mm-hmm.
their best that they know to do at this moment. Like the best Dylan knew to do last night was to fucking rage at me. I mean, rage was the best he knew to do, and it was clearly that's what was meant to happen. But it is so interesting to see, can we hold that paradox? Can we hold that and be with it? Which is they're doing the absolute best that they can do based on what they see to be true in the moment. even if their behavior looks entirely inappropriate to what your belief system says they should or shouldn't be doing. So you're saying to me that yes, they're doing their absolute best, and yes, their behavior might seem like so far off the scale. And it's like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. And the only thing that stops us from being empathetic is we attached to our judgment on their behavior more than our empathy and curiosity about what's actually sitting behind the behavior, what's sitting behind how they're showing up.
The word that keeps coming to mind is wrong. It's
Mm.
this concept of like what they're doing is wrong or how they're showing up is wrong, and I can't be wrong about that.
Yeah. And then I wonder if there's a part, like, I know for me, like, the trap I fall into more often than anything else is like, I think I have done something wrong. And then I get defensive. Like, I do think I must have done something, like, it's me, like, I get wrong. So, like, my insecurity gets triggered. Like, my insecurity goes off. And, then it's not like what's wrong from hey, are you okay? It's like, hey, what's wrong with you? Like, what's up? What'd I do? It's like, fucking you did fuck. And then I'll play out how the talk track goes. And it's like, nothing's up. You didn't do anything. Well, then why are you behaving the way you're behaving with me? And you can hear, like, I can hear my narrative running because I'm like, oh, I must have done something wrong, or I'm been blamed for something. And I can, there must be nothing that could possibly be more annoying to someone who's suffering than having to deal with the victim on the other side of their experience, wanting you to soothe them because they can't handle your weather. They've made their weather about your weather about them, which is that's my habit, like 100%. If Sean was here, Sean would just be like, "Yep, 1,000,000,000% that's his habit."
Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting, when he just says to Stellan Skarsgård, "It's not about you, mathematical dick. It's about will." It's got nothing to do with you and your giant MIT, ego. It's about the kid. It's about the kid and his internal weather system.
Like, I know I'm jumping to the bumper sticker, but that would probably be my bumper sticker. It's not
What?
about
It's not
you. I
about
thought,
you, mathematical dick.
yeah. But I think, because I'm not a math genius. I think I just go straight to the dick bit. It's not about you, you dick. Because I think it'd be a great, it's not about you.
But
Like,
isn't that,
that's
mate? I mean, like, if you kind of distill a lot of the explorations we have and the suffering we laugh about, point to, ruminate on, like that is often the insight is it's not about you, you dick. It's get curious about the other person. And it doesn't mean, and I think this is a big qualifier, like it doesn't mean you have to engage empathetically with everybody in the world and be a lightning rod for their storm. Like, like you don't have to hang out with the crazy makers. but you don't have to carry their storm cloud or meet their storm cloud with your storm cloud.
Actually, I think that's a great catch, because it could look very easily, oh, so I have to like sit and be with it, and and it's like, no. Sometimes you can just say, oh, um, I'm gonna like leave now and come back. Like, and they're like, are you angry at me? Absolutely not. But just like I can tell, like whatever's going on, like it's just not working for me right now. So I'm gonna go, and like I'm not engaging. Um, and uh, I think we are often very uncomfortable with that as well. Like that we can just say, hey,
Mm.
this isn't working for me right now, and so like I'm not annoyed, and I'm not like there's nothing here, but it's not working for me right now, so I'm gonna just leave. Um, because that's also a way of going like, I know this is nothing to do with me, but I'm not gonna sit here and allow it to be sometimes, which happens often, and I think what what is part of the practice is not reacting to people projecting their weather onto you. You are making me feel, you are, and that's very common. It's very common in families. It's very common just between human beings, for people. It comes back to what I said right at the beginning, because they don't know that their weather has nothing to do with anything outside of themselves. They project it onto all sorts of things outside of themselves. And when it gets projected onto you as a person, it does take that's what I meant. It's sometimes not effortless. Sometimes it takes effort to be able to go, okay, like I get it. You're going whatever's going on, but I'm not going to sit here and go through. So I'm going to leave, and I'll come back. But I'm not doing this. Sometimes that takes a lot of effort. Or I was just going to say, or sometimes it takes a lot of effort to just sit and take it, because you love someone enough that you just let them fucking unload onto you. Be like, yeah, okay, okay. Like, I hear you. I love you. I'm listening. I'm listening. I'm just going to sit here and listen, and not react, and be like, yeah, okay, I get it. And really listen. Like what's a practice when someone's got weather? If we're looking for a practice, shut the fuck up and listen.
Mm.
Just really listen. You'll never know what you'll hear. And so that also takes effort, as Mavis said once, someone said to her, how do I really practice listening? And she was like, just notice when you're not listening, and then start listening again. Like, how do I practice not reacting to someone else's weather? Notice when you're reacting and stop immediately. Stop talking, start listening. Like, it's probably a really good practice in life as well, is when you notice you've got weather, do more listening than talking, and will you'll probably end up on the better side of most interactions.
You're pointing to something that is very hard, is when you make space for somebody's pain or anger or rant or whatever it is, and you can sit there and listen without becoming the target of that pain, anger, rant. And that's just a wonderful thing to go and work on, is to say, if I choose to engage, like I might see somebody ranting, angry, and just go, oh, fuck, they've got some serious internal weather. And I'm not engaging with that. So I'm off. I'm just going to head in the opposite direction. Or if it's somebody you love and you know that they're like one of your kids or your partner or good mate, family member, and they are ranting, raging, going off on one, to then realize that you're willing to make space and sit in that space with that hectic storm, but you are not the target of the storm because it's got fuck all to do with you. And you will not react to the storm with anything other than deep empathy and love for that soul, not for the whatever caused the storm. Like, that's not really of interest to you. What you're interested in is them knowing that you are there doing deep listening without trying to solve or mend or do anything other than just listen.
Well, and that last
Yeah.
piece, Bilos, is massive because that's what we try and do. Like I think that is probably the thing I've learned the most, particularly I would say within the context of my marriage, just because that's the closest relationship I've got, is like the power of just sitting in the mud with someone and not trying to like, hey, like we need to get you up and out of here. And like if you just would just been like, okay. And like you've had a much more powerful experiences around this than I have. But what it is that, and not making it my job to like make the sun shine. Like, 'cause, A, you can't make the sun shine. And it comes back to like, it's fucking annoying when someone's like trying to make the sun shine. And you're like, listen, dickhead, there's no way that you're going to make the sun shine because A, you're not in control of my weather. So like, you can't. And B, like right now, that's not what I need from you. Like, just sit here in the rain. If you want to sit in the rain, if you don't want to sit in the rain, that's okay. But there's so much power in that, and this is where it comes back to again. Like, there's a few different components in this for me, but it comes back to the like. And if you can't do that, then that's because you've got stuff going on, and it's like your insecurity with being around someone else's discomfort. Your insecurity with the idea that of time and like things needing to be a certain way by a certain juncture, and it's like none of that shit matters. Like anything, that's probably most of the reason why people have weather is because they're trapped up in some of that, and then you join in. It's like a terrible idea.
But I think you've pointed to something very powerful there, mate, is like, because like if you can accept it's got nothing to do with you, that's like
Mm,
letting go, number one. But the flip side of that, which I think you've just put in the room, is accepting that you are not responsible for somebody else's weather. And so letting go of those two things creates the freedom to be
mm.
present and listen deeply.
And that's it.
That's it.
It's that simple. It's freaking hard, but it is that simple.
So, with that thought, matey, I think that concludes this exploration. So, thank you to Vanny for uh, tickling my interest, and thanks to you for uh, unraveling the ball of string.
Well, likewise, thanks, Vanessa. And yeah, it's been fun as always, man. It's been a good one. Funny how, like, actually both of us were coming at it like this would have been a very similar topic for me. So that's just cool. But that's a wrap for this week, folks. Um, it's not you, and you can't control someone's weather. So allow that to blossom over the coming days and weeks, and just see what happens if you can let go of both of those things and just get deeply curious, as Bilos pointed out to, about what could possibly be going on for those other souls around you, and see see what unfolds from there. And until we're with you next week, as always, go forth and live into your brilliance.